Hello, and welcome to Wellness Wednesday with 3W. Wellness Wednesday is sponsored by 3W Medical for Women, a nonprofit medical clinic offering free of charge or low-cost reproductive health services to women in the Seattle area, regardless of income or insurance status. 3W does not profit off the reproductive health choices women make. The information shared in this podcast is the opinion of the speaker or speakers. Medical information is not intended as individual medical consultation, but for general education only. Always consult your own health professional for personalized advice regarding medical decisions. And if you're in the Seattle area, consider making an appointment to consult with us. I'm Lauren Searden, Operations Manager for 3W Medical for Women, and the host of today's podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Wellness Wednesday with 3W. Today, your host is Lauren, and I am here again with our resident doula, I call her, Sulamita, or Sula the Doula. Thank you so much, Sulamita, for being here again. And they got me to host, and we're talking all about lactation support and postpartum and all the questions that we kind of thought of last time or started to get into last episode when we talked about swaddling and like baby gear. And we thought this would be a great podcast to do because I had all these questions. I was just telling her before we started, it's like information overload. I was telling my parents the other day, like, you just weren't meant to have this much information with the internet. Like, you can have every take that's ever been done. And as someone who wants to plan her life and her baby and all the things, it's too much. So I'm so excited to sit down with Sulamita and get some clarity as much as we can and also give education for all of you. So thank you so much for being here again. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So let's just do another quick introduction to the new listeners, if they haven't heard our previous episodes with you, and about who you are and your knowledge on all this.
Yeah, so I am a birth and postpartum doula. Been doing this for 3 years now. My postpartum doula training will come into play here for this podcast on like lactation and all that stuff.
Awesome.
I work as far as Everett all the way down to like Federal Way. That's kind of my range of every family that I've served.
Awesome. That's so great. So I think the first question that we can kind of start off with is, especially with you in your postpartum doula care, what are some issues or kind of the big, maybe I feel like everyone kind of will have a struggle, not everyone, but like the common struggle that people have with lactation, breastfeeding, pumping that new mothers kind of encounter.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, like early days of trying to figure out this whole feeding a baby thing off your own body.
I do think that breastfeeding is something that women should prepare for as much as we prepare for a baby. You know, we like get all the baby supplies before baby arrives and all this kind of stuff. And I think that if you like research and prepare for breastfeeding, that sets you up for success.
Totally.
So definitely don't wait until like your baby's here to try to help. The main number one problem that women have is pain because you're having someone suck on your nipples all day long.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're at the hospital, you're like, okay, this is not horrible.
Right.
You know, the first latch, that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, this isn't bad. But then day 2, day 3, a week later, you're like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, because it's constant. I mean, it's every
constant.
2 hours-ish.
Yeah, or more. You know, when they're like cluster feeding, they're just on all day.
All day.
So,
and in the beginning, from what I understand, again, this is coming from someone who's doing research and trying to do the things and read the things. In the beginning, especially, you know, the colostrum that comes in, we can get into all the different milk thingies, but it's thick. And so they have to suck for a good amount of time, if I'm not mistaken, to get it out. So that can kind of not set the nipples up for success, I imagine.
Yeah. And they kind of have to like toughen up if like the base,
kind of like getting like calluses on the hands
exactly.
when you're like working.
Exactly. So like kind of have to tough it out. I mean, I know that's just very just like harsh, but like there's nothing really, you can do things to make it feel better, but you got to stick with it and then you'll come out on the other end being able to. Now there's things that can make it painful like tongue ties, lip ties, incorrect latch, that those things can really, really help make it more comfortable.
Yeah.
But even if everything is going great, there's going to be some discomfort when you start
Totally.
your breastfeeding journey.
Yeah.
So you just kind of have to know that and be prepared for that. Like I said, so many people prepare for like labor and like the pain of that and like, you know, processing that.
Sure.
But I think that you have to carry that over into breastfeeding.
Yeah, totally. Do you feel like sometimes people, especially when you're in like this newborn days of lack of sleep, then this new task and pain and all the things, do you feel like sometimes people give up a little too early and then don't get over that hump of like pain or supply or all the things like that?
Yeah, I think lack of support helps people like throwing in the towel. If you have support from anyone in your community, you will be able to make it through. And it's just sometimes like word of affirmation to let you know that you're doing okay, you know? And then also not being scared to try formula while you're starting your breastfeeding journey. I feel like some people just switch right away to formula and then they just are like, this is what we're going to do. If your supply is not coming in, you know, and if it's day 4 and baby's hungry, it's okay to do it, but don't stop trying to get your milk to come in. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of that, the milk generally comes in 3 days postpartum?
It can be 3 to 5 days.
Okay.
So that's just kind of like the ballpark. Again, it's like hard to tell when it's going to come in, but that's just kind of like the normal range.
Yeah.
And so if you're one of those people that it takes, you know, a whole week, then you're going to have a little bit of a hungrier baby. I think researching a good formula that you like and having just a can of that at home is nice. So then when you're like, okay, we need to use formula, at least you feel good about which formula you're giving the baby. So that kind of is, like I say usually to my postpartum families, I'm like, just research one that you really are comfortable giving your baby.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like in my brain, personally, my intention is to like, we're going to figure this out and breastfeed and do it. But like, if it's not happening, you probably should have something in case, because if it's 2 a.m. and this child's screaming, like you're not maybe going to like be able to get said formula in that moment. So to have some probably.
Yeah. And I feel like formula has been so taboo, you know, like, oh, it's so bad, don't even try it. But I have seen it be used to kind of help the mom sit back and take a breather
and
then try again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like when she gets so frustrated, baby's screaming because baby's hungry, her milk is, you know, coming in, but not fast enough.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we're just going to pause and regroup. And then her milk comes in and then they just take off.
Exactly. Yeah. And then speaking of just like bottles, pumping, breastfeeding, I hear a lot about this nipple confusion. You know, it's like there's a million bottles, some are better for breastfeeding and, you know, bottle feeding babies. If you introduce a bottle too early, they won't take the breast. What are your thoughts on all of that? Obviously, like, we need to feed these babies. So like if it's a bottle, it has to happen. From what you experienced, if we can, you know, have someone who wants to breastfeed, but then needs to supplement a few feeds with bottles, how best to go about that for like young babies?
I think the biggest thing with nipple confusion that I've seen is that babies prefer bottles because it's easier to get the milk out.
Sure.
You know, so they prefer, so then when you start giving them a bottle and then you put them back on the breast, they're like, wait, why do I have to work to get the milk out of the breast when I can just have the bottle?
Because the bottle kind of, I mean, they have to suck, but it flows.
Exactly. It's just right there.
Yeah.
Where like your breast milk will like come, they have to suck and then you have a letdown and then they have to suck and you have a letdown.
Right.
So my biggest tip with that would be to give like 2 ounces of milk in a bottle, not a full feed.
Okay.
So first you would latch baby and try to nurse, and then you would unlatch baby and give them just enough to make them comfortable, but you're not actually feeding them with the formula.
That is so smart.
So that then they get hungry again and you're latching them again.
So they're almost associating having to work for like the work that it's like positive or like negative reinforcement. Like the work that they just did, they got a bottle and then they're like, oh, their brain almost thinks like I did that.
Yeah.
Even though they
got
didn't.
Some food. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you're not you're not completely making them full off the bottle. So then they're trying again. Try again. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. That's a new information that I found. I'm not an expert, but I've done a lot of research and I have not heard that one. So that is a good one. Thank you. So with this tongue, lip, cheek, all the ties that we hear about, it's so interesting because I was talking to my mom about this and it's like, they must have always been an issue, just people didn't do anything about it, because now like every baby I hear like, oh yeah, she has a tongue tie or lip tie. And so at what point can you figure that out? Is that like you're in the hospital, the nurse is helping you latch and they're like, oh yeah, you have a tongue tie? Or is this something that's discovered a week after you're home? Like and from your experience, when are we establishing that these babies have these issues, and how soon can we resolve if they happen?
Yeah. So usually the lactation consultant in the hospital will be able to kind of diagnose a lip tie. Nurses can, but they're not
Sure.
trained in it. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's really easy to spot. Even I could spot one, when I'm like with a baby, but I always tell parents to go see a lactation specialist to get like the formal diagnosis. And that can happen if you have one in the hospital. The one in the hospital will probably refer you to one in a clinic to like have it double checked, and then they'll schedule a revision.
And the lactation consultants can do those? Or does it usually a pediatrician or a dentist, or who does this?
It's going to be a dentist probably, because it's a medical procedure.
Sure.
So they're probably going to have someone on staff that is more well-versed in revisions. And a pediatric dentist will definitely be able to do one for you.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And so usually, I mean, if it's there and you have that resource, we can figure that out early. But if they don't, it might be, oh, I'm trying to latch and the baby's not latching
And
well.
sometimes, you take him to the doctor and they're like, we don't see anything, but you're having trouble breastfeeding. So then you go to a lactation specialist and they're like, actually, there is something there.
Yeah.
And also having it revised will not guarantee that things start to go smoother.
I got you.
So it's just like a thing that you can try, but it's not a guarantee that it will help.
Yeah. And you can have a lip or tongue tie and have fine breastfeeding too, right?
That is correct.
It might not affect breastfeeding, but it could.
Yes.
Maybe like the severity of it, or
I think no, because I breastfed my daughter and she had a lip tie. And this is a whole rabbit hole.
Sure.
Because she breastfed fine, but I feel like now that she's a toddler, I see the symptoms of her not getting it revised.
Yeah.
So there's other things besides breastfeeding that tie into.
Sure. I'm sure it's a motivating factor if like someone's not breastfeeding well to do it, or a baby's not breastfeeding well. But even if not, it might lead to issues or different things down the road. And so speaking of the lactation specialist or consultant, should everyone see a lactation consultant? When should women? Should you only reach out when you're having issues, or should it kind of be like doula care, or how we deal with maternity care is like you go to someone almost preventatively. Like my appointments aren't for my midwife aren't super exciting. It's more like if problems arise. So should it be like that for lactation, or only go when you have found like, okay, something's not working?
I recommend going before baby's here, just to like sit down and talk to someone again to prep. Also, your nipples change like before baby, after baby's here, and then like a month after baby's been feeding on them. So I would like to check in at different times. So before baby, just to kind of get and she'll look at your the size, who your nipple shapes are, to kind of give you tips on like how to make it better or smoother transition for breastfeeding. And then after baby's born, most hospitals, and I say hospitals, but if you're giving birth at home or at a birth center, they probably have a lactation consultant that you could speak with right away to kind of help the latch, because you've never latched a baby on before. There's different positionings that you can try. That's kind of nice to have someone there to help. And then a week or two after, and then a week or two after that, just to check in again, I think is really nice to have. Getting connected with a lactation center near you, just so that you know where it's at, their phone number. Right. And scheduling an appointment. If you don't need that appointment, you can cancel it.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's kind of a long, it can be 2 weeks out. Right. And if you're having a lot of pain with breastfeeding or with latching, that's a long 2 weeks. Totally. And so I say schedule that appointment, when baby's here. And then if you don't need it, you can cancel it, but definitely get in, because they can it can be the turning point of whether this is a successful journey for you or not. Sure. So I do really recommend utilizing them.
Yeah, definitely. And then kind of not final, but one of my other questions is for pumping, if you are planning on eventually bottle feeding and you're going to pump in the beginning, I know there's, obviously breastfeeding is a lot about supply and demand. The more supply, the more demanded, the more supply you produce. When should you introduce pumping? If you're breastfeeding your baby, you want to, maybe not exclusively breastfeed, but mostly breastfeed in the beginning, and then eventually maybe do pumping and breastfeeding combination. Will you oversupply if you're pumping and breastfeeding at the same time in those early days?
You can. And that's kind of the worry that a lot of people have. I do recommend pumping in the beginning to get your milk to come in.
Okay.
Once your milk is in, you stop pumping and kind of let your body figure out what's going on.
Needs.
Yeah, because you're gonna get so much milk that just kind of like comes in.
Oh yeah,
engorgement.
I've heard people wake up and they're like, this feels different. Like it's just like it's like a moment almost.
And also like if a mom calls me and she's like, I am in so much pain because I'm so full of milk, I recommend pumping a little bit just to get like the relief. The relief. Also, if you're super engorged and your boobs are hard, baby can't latch. It's like trying to latch onto a balloon. They're like can't get that good deep latch. So
I
recommend
have to pump a little bit to like empty them out of it.
Pump till your breasts get a little soft and then latch baby on.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the Haakaas on the other boob?
I love it.
Okay.
I love it. Recommend it. Use it.
Yes.
Yes, I'm a big fan of Haakaas.
Okay. And that, for people that don't know, it's like a passive almost pump. Like, how would you explain it?
It is kind of like a hand pump.
Yeah.
I call it the boob grenade because it kind of looks like one. But you just kind of suction it on your breast, and then you don't have to like pump or anything. It just uses the force of the suction. So it's a little bit gentler than a pump, and it can be a nice way to collect milk without having to hook up, because if you're feeding baby on one side, you can be using it on the other side. Also, if you do have an oversupply, or if your milk is coming in hot and heavy, and infants are also learning how to breastfeed and milk is being sprayed everywhere, and they're like, I don't know what's going on.
They're like getting like choked almost. Like it's like coming out too fast.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can like feed on one side while your baby's struggling. Yeah. But you Haakaas the other side, and it kind of empties it out and makes the lets down less forceful.
Oh, cool.
So when you switch to the other side, your baby will be able to kind of like nurse a little bit calmer. Yeah. So I do like to use the Haakaas. Even if you're having forceful letdowns and it's almost time to feed, I say Haakaas and then feed. Just to kind of give your baby, because you don't want your baby to start to not like to breastfeed because they're just constantly fire hose in the mouth.
Sure. I know. It's so funny. It's like these babies, I understand. They come from this environment that they get everything they need, but they're very picky. Too hard, they're not going to do it. Too much, they're not going to do it. I'm like, okay, we're trying our best over here. It's just funny when you think about these things. They're like, because I have friends I have two friends, one who was a severe undersupplier, one who was a severe oversupplier. And it's like, that, and my friend who was an oversupplier, her baby had tongue ties. So the milk was coming out, and it was just like, there was no latch. This baby was getting milk everywhere. And they were like, it was the middle of the night, day 3 of like, what do we freaking do? Some people have like the dream breastfeeding experience where like everything works out, but like you may have one of the issues like, oh, I didn't have a problem producing milk, but like the baby couldn't latch, or the milk isn't coming in, the baby has a perfect latch, So I just feel like having that lactation consultant or someone that we can go to when it's happening, because like you said, we don't know what's happening. Yeah. Never done this before. Yeah. And you don't know what your thing might be.
Right. And, even the most, like, you could have a perfect breastfeeding journey with a lot of just like milk pouring out of the baby's mouth. Yeah. That's okay. And almost like just expect that. Yeah. Go in the mindset of expecting like leakage and just like milk everywhere, and that's going to be your life for the first 3 months after baby, know, and that's the perfect breastfeeding journey. Like that's what it actually looks like. I don't know what else people are expecting. You know what I mean?
Like they get the perfect amount and there's no spillage and no one spits up. It's
get all that. Get the birth cloths ready. The bed will be covered in milk, you'll be covered in milk, and that's the beauty of postpartum.
You're like, and that is the beauty of creating life. Yes. It is really cool. I mean, just the fact that we as women can grow said child and then sustain the child on the body. Obviously it's not a perfect system, and they're not without challenge, but I think remembering that it's really cool that it can happen, I think for me makes me mentally be like, okay, I can push through this, because like I think it's awesome that we can do this.
Yeah, almost. That's a good way to look. Yeah.
Because it's like, I mean, sorry, love my husband, but you're useless. Look at me being like the sole incubator, and now I'm going to feed the child. Like it, and yes, it does, I'm sure, put pressure, and it's a lot on the mothers to have to be the sole. So utilizing bottles or formula when needed to give people a break. But I think also just remembering that we have this capability to try to do it is like super cool and worth the maybe extra energy of going to a lactation consultant to, because once you get over the hump, it can be easy breezy.
Yeah. And I tell a lot of my new moms when they're like trying to put baby on the breast and it takes like, a good 10 minutes to get a good latch. I'm like, I know you're picturing like your friend who has a 6-month-old.
Yeah.
And it's
Who's
just like
throwing it on
exactly.
the boob.
Like it's just so easy, and that's what we see usually in public.
Sure.
We see the breastfeeding that's super easy where mom just and they're eating and the mom's eating, talking to a friend.
Yeah, they're covered up. Like, it's like it didn't happen.
Right. And so that's why like we're like, it should be that way.
Yeah.
But that mom, when, the baby was 2 months old, was also going through what you're going through.
Exactly.
So we just have to like stop comparing it to a 6-month-old.
Oh, yeah.
The baby's also learning, you're learning together.
Exactly.
And so just
having grace for each other.
Yes. And remembering that it does get easier.
Totally. I think that's great. Rolling into some of just with postpartum, obviously postpartum pain can be the nipples having, tenderness. Oh, what are some, with the nipple tenderness, I know there's some things we can do. What are your favorite, it's going to hurt, we're going to do things. Do you like the nipple butters, the Silverette thingy bobs that you put on there? What are your favorite relief techniques for the nipple hurting that might not take away at all, but will help between feeds and such?
Yeah. So nipple creams and stuff like that, I feel like helps more with like cracking or like dry nipples. And I actually recommend when you're breastfeeding after you unlatch baby, your breast milk is like so medicinal. Right. So just kind of like rub it on your nipple and let that dry. You don't necessarily need to go buy 50 creams.
Okay.
I like creams for like if you get like a yeast thrush is kind of popular. So then definitely use all the creams there.
Sure.
I like the Silverettes. Those are really nice. My favorite is the Hydrogel pads.
Okay.
Because you can put them in the fridge and so it cools and then putting it on between feedings. It also creates a barrier between your nipple and the bra.
Sure.
So, like the Silverettes do too. Yeah. And your nipples are like very tender going through this like beating up phase.
So any like friction or rubbing.
Right. And even like the pads that they put on is like not the most comfortable, So having those on to kind of help give them a break. That's my favorite one. And then for just postpartum pain relief, there's so much. The FridaMom Postpartum Kit has like the ice packs and the sprays. Ice packs, I do like. The Perineal Spray is nice.
Yeah.
A heating pad is also something that you can kind of have by your bedside to help. Even with your breasts too. Yeah. If they get very full and you need to empty them, kind of warming them up a little bit beforehand helps the milk flow.
Cool. I didn't know that.
And then you will get offered pain medication after childbirth, and I recommend taking it.
Okay. Good to know.
I am like I don't own Tylenol or ibuprofen at home, but after childbirth,
take the dang Tylenol.
Yes, because you don't need to prove to anyone that you're a superhero, and you need to be comfortable to take care of your baby.
Yeah.
So, you need to kind of manage your pain so that you can show up for your baby.
Especially if you've had a tear or a repair, I'm sure that contributes. And like even if you had your vagina stretched exactly how it should, I'm sure it's still painful.
It is, and sore and healing.
A baby just came out of there. Or if you had a C-section, I mean, that's a whole other can of worms. That's major abdominal surgery.
Yes.
So I'm sure that take the meds.
Take the meds because you'll feel better.
Yeah. Is there any, I mean, maybe for like the higher pain meds for like C-section, but is there any, like, would it affect milk supply to take medication or no?
No, not. Yeah, no, they wouldn't give it to you.
Right.
There's a long list of medications that you shouldn't take, but as far as pain medication goes, like they alternate ibuprofen and Tylenol, and that's safe to take while breastfeeding.
Awesome. Any other things for the perineal area that you feel like is really good for helping with pain relief? Or just like, I know like the perineal spray bottle thingy-mabob.
Yeah,
I'm using that thingy-mabob a lot because I don't know these technical terms, but you're not supposed to like wipe.
Oh, the water bottle.
The water bottles.
Yeah. Yes, that is a good one. And sometimes women need it and some don't. It also depends on if you tear and where you tear.
Okay.
So
is that mostly for people who've torn they have to use that, or is that?
If it's a tear usually near the urethra,
okay,
then yes, you'll sting a little bit with pee. But I mean, you're not supposed to wipe either way. So even if it's not stinging or there's no tears, it's nice to kind of like flush everything out after you can tap with like a paper towel to kind of like dry things.
Wipe things, like friction. Yeah. And then I've heard, people will do the pads with the underwear or like the Depends where it's just all, what do you feel like your postpartum ladies mostly appreciate? Or is it kind of a personal preference?
I think at first it's the pads, the giant pads with the mesh underwear, just because that gives you a little bit, it holds everything together a little bit more. And then after the bleeding kind of slows down, then they switch to the Depends.
Okay, cool. So when I think, anything else? The last question we have on here is talking about getting quality sleep when attending to the baby's needs. I feel like you're just not going to get good sleep in the beginning, but enlighten me. Is there anything we can do? Well, obviously we're going to wake up. Obviously the baby's on their own schedule and they're figuring out this whole life thing, but how can we best? Obviously getting a postpartum doula, that would be beautiful, but that's not everyone's scenario. So
it's just having support from somebody else. It doesn't have to be a postpartum doula, but if you're waking up at night, you're going to have to wake up at night, every 2 to 3 hours to get your baby up to birth weight. That's just like, you're going to have to do that. Yeah. Having someone else do it with you makes it a little bit easier.
For sure.
Resting, like, you don't go to the pumpkin patch with your 2-day-old, like
stay home, people.
Stay home. You're on the couch. You're watching your shows. Because even though you are awake, your body's still resting.
Totally.
And so just taking that time to kind of rest and do all the things, drink the hot teas to kind of help your body relax. Try to keep your mind from like spiraling, so like mind and body are relaxed and calm. And so that can help when you're not getting sleep.
Yeah. Where like you're not exerting so much energy in the day for the night to be like, I'm exhausted. Because waking up every 3 hours isn't going to feel great, but it's going to feel probably worse if you've lived a whole day like you did postpartum.
Pre-baby. Yeah. Pre-baby. And you say it's waking up every 3 hours, but you wake up, you feed, you change the baby, you burp, you get the baby back to sleep, and then it's really like an hour and a half until the next feeding.
I know. That's kind of like this whole thing I learned about contractions. It's really not 2 minutes apart. It's 2 minutes from the start of the next one. I'm like, well, that's really not 2 minutes apart. That's like a minute apart if they're lasting a minute. So it's also a little bit of a lie, like every 2-3 hours. Yeah. It's every 2 hours are awake. That doesn't mean that you're getting 2 hours of sleep.
Right. So that's why it's nice to have someone else. So you feed and then you hand the baby off so they can do the changing and the swaddling and the burping. And the putting. So you are awake for maybe 30 minutes at most. Yeah. And then you're back to sleep.
Yeah. Especially, I think, like the person that's just given birth that is having to breastfeed, that's a lot on the body, and some good sleep may help. Obviously it's gonna help with just healing, with feeling like some sanity, and then we're both in this crazy life together.
Yeah.
the partner or the family member or whoever it is.
And you'd be surprised. I've had moms who are like, I just need you for one night. Yeah. And then one night of sleep and they're like, I am a new woman.
Oh, yeah. My friend will be like, I slept 4 hours. And this is my friend who before our baby was like an 11-hour. Like she could sleep as long as, if no one woke her up, she'd keep sleeping. So she'd be like, I'm a new person. I slept 4 hours. And I'm like, who is this girl? No, totally. Yeah. What is your thoughts on like, if the mom needs a nap, like in the day or whatever, like taking the baby away? Does that help with like, not taking the baby away, but like knowing maybe like going on a walk or doing something with the baby where like they know like they don't have to hear the baby crying? Does that help like get actual rest? Because I feel like I've heard people that are like, I'm asleep, but I'm not fully there because I know like there's some need that's going to be met or need to be met. How do you feel about that? About the like someone like knowing that someone's like going to take care.
Yeah.
And you can actually sleep.
Yeah. That is nice, but I also don't, especially like in the first couple of weeks, I don't like the idea of separating mother and baby.
Yeah.
So maybe take the baby and get but like give the mom the rest she needs, but she also might be awake the whole time worrying about the baby because now you're such a part of that baby and that baby's such a part of you.
Yeah, it's like you're one.
Yeah, so dad takes the baby for a walk and you're gonna be like, where's my baby?
Yeah, no, that's so true. I know my husband and I keep having funny things. He's like, I'm like, I don't know. I'm gonna like, I already feel this, like, obviously this attachment, like she's always with me. And I'm like, I have to share her with the world. Like, I don't know about that. My parents keep joking, like, we're never going to hold this baby. Lauren's just going to hog it. I go, yeah, I am, because I'm the one that grew her.
Yeah.
No, that's a really great point. Any final thoughts for our listeners about just all the things postpartum, lactation, pain?
The thing with lactation is prepare for it just like you're preparing for birth.
Yep.
prepare, and then you'll be able to have the journey that you want if you're prepared. And just like, there's so many things that you can buy beforehand. So like you said, it's 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And you're not like, oh, I wish I had a bottle of formula right now so that baby could sleep. No, it's going to be hard. You'll get frustrated. Baby will get frustrated. But you'll learn together. And you will be that mom who just easily plops baby on the boob at a restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other day, my friend was breastfeeding, and I was like, you're done? Like, he's one. He isn't breastfeeding. It's more like a comfort thing. But she had done it so quickly and like just over in the other room that I didn't even realize it happened. Yeah. And I'm like, that's not like that 1-year-old is going to be way different, like you said, than a 1-day-old, 1 month old. So I think that's a really great thing to remember, because it is true. We're not seeing people struggle through these because we don't need anyone. I don't want to be there. You don't want me there. But it's true that we're not really around the struggle. And then we just see this like beautiful, fruitful connection that this mom and baby have. It's like, I want to get there. Well, you got to kind of push through. Yes. I would say. Yes. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here again, Sulamita. So great to have you as always. You are just such a great resource we have here.
Reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and be well. For more information about 3W, please visit our website at 3wmedical.org. That's the number 3, the letter W, medical.org. From there, you can learn more about the services we provide, book an appointment, or even make a donation if you'd like to help support our mission. You can also call our office at 206-588-0311. That's 206-588-0311. If you liked this episode, please share it with others and consider subscribing on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, stay healthy and be well.